Hello and welcome to Masters of Divinity. I'm your moderator JP, and I'm here with Father Kunu.
Rocking that kukui nut lay.
Good Lord. What has happened to our podcast?
Well, can we acknowledge that we had set this up a little bit differently? Like, I didn't have this on originally, but then our internet decided to crap out, and so you missed out this whole thing where I went and fetched this. We had this whole conversation about how this symbolizes, the spirit of a teacher, and I wear it for Sundays and stuff. Right? It was given to me by the school here at St. Mary's.
But so I'm not
just blinging it. I'm not just blinging.
Yeah, and and you see, folks, that's the good kind of cultural appropriation.
Right.
People think that when they hear cultural appropriation, it's like, oh, it's bad, evil. Like, no. Actually, it's not. It's neutral. Like, it's not good or bad. There are good kinds and there are bad kinds. Bad supermodel and a native headdress is bad appropriation. This was given to you.
Right. Well, I mean, like, all of fashion involves some degree of cultural appropriation, right? I mean, the polo shirt, right? Khakis.
Really?
Right? Khakis were originally worn by, like, the Bohemian Army or something like that, right? So, like, every article of clothing that we have at some point or another has some roots in another culture. Now, obviously, some of it was just sort of taken because it was like, oh, I think that's cool. I'm just going to now that is now appropriated as a part of my identity.
Right.
Who cares if it has deeply held cultural resonance with you? I do what I want, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, like you said, like, something that was bestowed on someone,
right?
You have the blessing of wearing it.
I would say that's like the best kind of appropriation.
Yeah,
you can't beat that.
Right. Well, and it's also a thing that, like, wearing a lei in Hawaii is a bit different than wearing a lei on the mainland, right? Like, when you start wearing them as, like, oh, we're having a beach party, here's a lei.
Wearing them at the Polynesian resort at Disney World.
Well, I mean, there's some degree of where they've engaged, like, some Polynesian cultural stuff to kind of give that an okay. But it's still but it's still an iffy thing, right? Because it's not like a lei is a very culturally it's a deep cultural thing in Hawaii to give a lei. I mean, it's an act of aloha. You're really meant to sort of go out and get the flowers yourself and string them and make them to give them to someone as a sign of your affection for them. The idea that you would just sort of willy-nilly get them and give them to people is...
So if I showed up in Hawaii and I got off the plane and you were picking me up and I was wearing a shirt that said, I'm here to get laid.
That would not be good.
No, not good? Not good. All right. It reminds me of, like, when I went to China and I thought I was being so ironic wearing my Bruce Lee is my homeboy t-shirt.
Right.
Like, around students and stuff. But at the same time, they actually all loved it. They thought it was funny. I don't know. Probably not. You probably shouldn't do that. But it worked out in the end.
Yeah. Well, they probably thought it was funny for reasons different than you did.
Well, I mean, it started a lot of conversations about Bruce Lee. People wanted to talk to me about Bruce Lee when they saw it. Like,
yeah.
Oh, you really like him? I love his movies. I'm like, yeah, he rules.
There you go.
I was also wearing a Bruce Lee hat.
That's a bit extra.
Well, do you remember my Bruce Lee hat that I wore all the time in college?
No.
No? Oh, okay.
I remember my first time going to Jamaica, and one of my favorite moments was one of my friends on the mission trip in Jamaica asking the Jamaicans, have you ever seen Cool Runnings? Complete sincerity.
And they were like, of course I have.
They're like, these are kids whose parents, like, push a push cart to make money. Yeah, I'm sure that they have a VHS player at home that has a well-worn copy of Cool Runnings.
That's great.
They love John Candy. I mean, come on.
Oh, man. gosh, there are probably so many other stories I have, but I don't know. As you can tell, we don't really have a topic this week, so we're just having fun. We're just guys
Yeah.
being dudes.
Well, you were before the internet decided to abandon us. You were talking about research on other podcasts, and you were surprised to learn how prepared they are.
Yeah, and I was really surprised. I'm like, I don't think we could. I think if we had to do this, we just wouldn't do it.
Well, I remember I've only watched one Lindsay Ellis video.
Yeah,
You're a fan of Lindsay Ellis, and
big fan of Lindsay Ellis.
I'm a fan of her work from the one thing I watched. And but listening to her talk about like all the research and prep work, she just sort of that one episode you watched, it had to do with like protest music.
Protest music under the Bush era.
Yeah, and she indicated something in that episode about like the research she did for this episode, or how long ago she had planned out this episode. I remember thinking, and then watching it and seeing the amount of production and work that goes into it, and sort of like her and her people, like they map out a season.
Oh yeah, dude.
Of what they're gonna do. I mean, they do treat it like an actual television show.
Well, she makes enough money to do that.
Well, of course.
I mean, I don't know how much she makes. It's all from a combination of Patreon and sponsors. She has an agent.
Jeez.
And she has like a whole crew. And I think as of last year, I think like they just bought their own production space. Like their own production office. And she has people on payroll. She's paying their health insurance.
Yeah,
and she's still in debt for going to film school at both NYU and USC.
Oh. I got to say, as much as I complain about the internet, and I sort of see it as this thing that has brought a lot of negativity into the world.
Yeah.
I also can't help but appreciate the fact that this sort of disruptive quality that it has, where someone like Lindsay Ellis, or I mean, shoot, you and me and Matt, we just get a hold of some equipment and we put together a thing.
Yeah, and that's how she.
Somebody can make a bunch of money, or you just do it for fun.
And that's how she started out, like us. I mean, kind of. She there's this website called Channel Awesome. It sucks. Hosted by the it's not awesome. Hosted by the Nostalgia Critic, who he had his time in the sun.
Yeah.
And at the beginning of his popularity, he had a contest looking for the nostalgia chick, who was going to be like a female version of him. And they had like a contest, and Lindsay submitted her, video or whatever, and she won. And it basically just started out like she already had a platform waiting for her, an audience waiting for her, and she just kind of ran with it. She started out like just basically like us, like just a poor quality camera and her talking in front of it, talking about like feminism and Labyrinth, and now she's doing what she's doing today, and it's pretty awesome. I've been following her since the beginning. That Labyrinth episode was the first one I ever watched, and it is poor quality compared to what she's doing now.
It is very fun to go back and to see like the beginning stages of these sorts of things, right? Like even our first episode is hilarious.
Yeah, you can hear it sounds like we're on a ship, like in the bow of a ship. I think we even say that in the episode. I don't know.
I think we said the second episode. But...
Yeah. Because we had no microphones. It was funny because like we were just crowded around my laptop.
Yeah.
I pressed record on GarageBand, and we just like, what are we doing? And I went to Birth Movies Death and found that Superman article, and here we are. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. The reason why I was doing the research, Chuck, is because I've been asked by my local library to be a guest on a panel about starting a podcast.
Okay.
and I'm pretty excited about it. So I decided just to kind of do. I don't know. I just decided to. I just looked around the podcast sphere and just see like what are people doing. Kind of gather my own information. But I was struck by like how how prepared some people are compared to us. And can I just read this guy's process real quick? And because I just want to hear your reaction. Okay. We have a process that gives us turnaround in 2 days on a 30-minute podcast. We start with an outline/treatment and record an unscripted version based on that outline. We transcribe the unscripted version, revise it, polish it, and run through it twice. Record on both or at least the second take. Then review the audio. Punch in ADR on any poorly recorded/enunciated segments. Spend the second day editing, mixing, mastering, publishing, and done.
They do ADR?
Yeah.
I mean, right there, that's way more than I'm ever willing to engage in.
That's what I was saying. If we did something like that, we would just not do this. Like, I always felt like the benefit of podcasting is that you don't have to be an expert audio engineer to do a good podcast.
My hair is like bugging me when I look at my little picture up here. So I'm like doing the George McFly thing. I'm your density. One of the things that I love about what like a podcast, like you said, like what it offers to us is this, dare I say, punk rock.
Yeah, I always compare it to a garage band.
Yeah, we're basically the Shags, right? we just hit record and we put it out there, and it is.
Yeah.
And that's sort of my approach to like almost everything that I do in a digital format. I kind of like the idea that you can see the warts, right? Like it's almost like jazz. Like you need the like impromptu qualities that you're not like when it's too polished, it doesn't feel authentic.
Right.
And one thing I can't stand about podcasts, I don't listen to very many of them because they've all kind of like how we talked about with EDC last week. Like they've all started to kind of become like very like what's the term I'm thinking of? Like homogenous.
Yeah.
And they have this very like distinct aesthetic, and you hear the voice in the microphone. They have the thing, and they carry through all the sounds of their vowels, and they speak in this even tone. You can hear the spit in their mouth. I just
Yeah, I'm the same way. I noticed that about myself too. About listening to podcasts, the only podcasts I like listening to are on the sort of unconventional side. I will probably listen to somebody doing a podcast with their like gaming microphone over like another former president starting a podcast, you know.
Are you talking about Bill Clinton?
Yes. They have to stop, Chuck. We can't compete against that.
I know. White guys in their podcasts.
We got to compete against Conan O'Brien, Michelle Obama, and Bill Clinton. Whatever.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know. There's also this element to when you talk about listening to these low quality podcasts. Maybe we should try to do the opposite, and we should try to be like the torchbearers of just like crap quality podcasts. Like we we intentionally use the worst stuff. Like you've got like the barrel webcam from the old Macs, you know, that you like stick on top, and the webcam or like your microphone is the mic that comes from the Famicom that was used in the original Zelda to yell at the bunnies in the Japanese version of Zelda.
I'm thinking of the microphone that came with your Dell PC. That was that really long one.
Oh yeah.
You had to like mount and. Yeah.
or
like I said, like a gaming headset.
or like, yeah. Or yeah, it gave me hints. I'm just trying to think, like, because I got my mask here, like
Put this over the mic and just see what does this do to the sound. Is this just completely unlistenable?
Yeah. Well, and I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Like I would prefer that. I just maybe it's just in my old age. I don't know. I just prefer scrappier people. I prefer to let like the talent speak for itself.
I realize, and this is a similar thing to me about like the church.
Yeah.
I think I may have mentioned this a month or so back, but I feel a lot. I realized in the past like year and a half, 2 years or so, that I don't want to be the priest at the polished big parish.
Yeah.
I like scrappy parishes.
Right, yeah.
I like, I like when I walk into St. Mary's that you can see some of the water stains from a leak in the roof, right? Like, right. I like that. When the church I worked at in seminary, Epiphany, was this big, beautiful old church, gorgeous thing. But when I was there, it was like falling apart around us. And there was something to that. I liked seeing like the wood falling off, one of the beams upstairs, up above, the kind of the fear that, maybe something's going to collapse on me in the middle of a service.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I went to my fair of those kinds of churches in my travels, and they were always the more spirited ones,
yeah.
It's like there was something required of the people being there.
Right. It kind of makes me think a little bit about Bonhoeffer. Bonhoeffer being this German Lutheran who came to teach at Yale. Or was it Howard or Columbia? I can't remember. Anyway,
I think Bonhoeffer died, right? Like,
Bonhoeffer. I mean, yeah, Bonhoeffer ended up going back to Germany and dying, but he spent a time teaching in the United States.
Okay, I didn't know that. I don't know. I don't have that comprehensive knowledge of Bonhoeffer. Sorry.
It's all right. Anyway, he came to the United States. I have to look this up because somebody's going to correct me on this and call me out that I should know my Bonhoeffer more. But all I remember about Bonhoeffer is that he did not attend Lutheran churches, even though he was a Lutheran when he was here in the States, that he preferred instead to go to churches in Harlem because he felt that they were more authentically Christian than the sort of mainstream Lutheran churches that he experienced. And I feel that. Mm-hmm. And and you run the risk, of course, like in college, right? Like there was that risk of going to a church like that because it's an affectation, right? Like,
right.
Oh, you go to Christ Fellowship? Well, I'm going to the Black Charismatic Church in Palm Beach Lakes.
Yeah.
Right. Like there is a temptation to do it as like an affectation thing, but I think Bonhoeffer was onto something, that there really is something to, like you said, those kinds of environments because they sort of require something of you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, like in art too, like, something that's sort of lo-fi.
Yeah, that's it. I love the lo-fi. That's my style.
Yeah, it does require something, right? Like anybody can listen to like a crystal clear podcast on their, Bose stereo system in their car.
Yeah.
Right. But you want the podcast that like, it kind of fades out on the passenger side speaker in your old Corolla.
It's only playing on one side. Yeah.
You've got your iPhone plugged into that thing that goes in, that's like a cassette tape that goes in the deck so that you can.
It's true. I mean, and there are polished ones I listen to. That's fine, but at the same time, there are ones that are like, Matt has started listening to this podcast called The King Cast, and it's hosted by Scott Wampler from BMD.
Yeah.
And I think Drew McQueenie from Ain't It Cool News from back in the day. And it's all about, it's a Stephen King podcast. And it's actually like, it sounds really great on paper. Like these two cool film critics. One I love because he's like hilarious and he has a great knowledge of all kinds of cool stuff. One, just a great film critic. And they're talking about Stephen King books and their adaptation with a celebrity guest. And they get some cool guests. Like they got Kumail Nanjiani. They got Alex Winter recently. They got some high profile people. And I listened to an episode. I'm like, this is boring. Like everything works. The sound is perfect. they got two great hosts. You got celebrity guests, and I'm like, I can't really finish an episode. Not into it. But then, I listened to my favorite podcast of all time was Harmontown, and it's just Dan Harmon just like saying whatever he's thinking on a microphone. Like in the earlier days when it was Scrappier, when it first started out, he was just like Harmontown. When Harmontown first started out, it was just Dan Harmon and his friend Jeff, who's on it anyway, and they would meet at this famous comic book store in LA called Meltdown Comics, and Meltdown Comics had something called the Meltdown Theater, or no, the Nerd Melt Theater or something like that. Some nerd crap. But it's just like a basement. It wasn't like a fancy theater, just like a dingy basement, and that's where they met every week. And Harmon would just talk. And I'm like, that is what I like. And granted, right. Harmon is, he created Rick and Morty and Community and stuff, but still granted. Like, at that moment, the talent is just speaking for itself, like I said.
You know what it is?
Yeah.
It's the difference between going to like a big production like Wicked or The Lion King or some big Broadway thing.
Yeah.
When there's this little black box theater a few blocks away that's doing just some avant-garde weirdness.
They're all wearing black turtlenecks, and you have to use your imagination on what the set is.
Yeah. The entire the audience is on the stage and the play is taking place around the audience. And the stage is drawn with chalk on the ground and
totally.
And the only music is tuning forks. I mean, it's I want to go see that.
Totally. Yeah.
I mean, Wicked's awesome. I've seen Wicked, right? But I'm also really interested in that weird thing that I wish Matt were here because we could talk a little bit about Velocipaster.
Yeah.
Because he took one for the team and watched that garbage.
Yeah.
And as he pointed out, he was expecting it to be a Miami connection and not a Sharknado.
Right.
And
which I knew this saw the trailer, it was going to be a Sharknado, by the way.
Right. So if any listeners who don't know what that we're talking about here is, a Sharknado is a movie that sets out to be bad.
Yeah.
And not like in a
it's like
fun,
purposely kitsch,
grindhouse Tarantino type way.
Right.
But in a just bad. They're trying to make a bad movie. They know they're making a bad movie. It's not like Miami Connection, which is not necessarily from a filmmaking standpoint good.
Yeah.
But you can tell that everyone involved believed fully in what they were doing.
Totally.
And therefore the movie is good because they're so committed to what they're trying to do. Right. And they clearly don't have the budget to accomplish all that they want to accomplish, but they also don't try to fake it. They don't try to do special effects or anything that are above their pay grade, right? They know the limitations of what they have, and they work within the parameters that they've been given to make the best product they have with those limitations.
Yeah, and YK Kim is very much under the impression that he's making an Enter the Dragon.
Right. Yeah, they really think they're making a martial arts masterpiece. They really do. And didn't the movie come out the same year as Batman?
I don't remember. I think it was a little bit earlier than that.
Okay. I'm trying to remember when it came out, but I remember they really thought that it was going to just destroy at the box office.
And bring world peace.
That's right. But so that's the thing. I like a Miami Connection. That's what we're talking about here, right? Is people who embrace what their limitations are, but are sort of committed to it, rather than people who are I guess a movie like Velocipaster comes from a place of privilege.
Probably.
They have this sort of disposable income to make garbage. Do you know what I mean?
Uh-huh. I know. And it's also there's a fine line to it as well, because and I've talked about this before. I haven't really gone into detail on how it would work, but one thing that Dan Harmon always talked about in Harmontown when he was giving advice to writers was like, don't be afraid to be bad.
Right.
Like, if you want to have a one-up on professionals, write something right now. Because you're going to put out more stuff than the pros are putting out, because they're like banging their heads against the wall trying to get through like one draft. Meanwhile, you have like 5 drafts of a screenplay about like a guy who farts lasers or something. You know? And from that sort of philosophy, he developed this kind of a film festival. He calls it a television festival. It's essentially a film festival, where you have to you produce the first episode, and it gets screened on the big screen, and then everyone votes on which show goes forward and which ones get canceled. And you're kind of expected to do like as little work as possible, like as little, like it's not supposed to be polished. Like, you just use whatever is at your disposal. And that thing where I said a guy who farts laser beams, that was one of Dan Harmon's shows that he made for this thing. It was called Laser Fart. And there's like one about a guy who's like a cop, but his thing is that he like surfs on top of cars. That's how he chases people. So like, and I've watched a number of these, and they're great. They're hilarious. It's got that Adult Swim weirdness to it.
Right.
Right. But there is an evil side to it, and that's the Sharknadoes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know how to avoid one or the other. But like, I don't know, maybe it's like Kurt Cobain, right? Where it's like, oh, it looks like he just picked up a guitar out of a dumpster and just like he just started playing Smells Like Teen Spirit. But in reality, you know, he's like a trained professional. Like, he's had a lot of years of experience. He's actually quite a genius, you know?
Well, I think one thing with Cobain, part of like the aesthetic.
Yeah.
Right. Some of it's affectation, right? It's undeniable that some of it's affectation. Personal style is always affected.
Right.
But in terms of like his guitars and his instrumentation and the sounds that he achieved, a lot of that had to do with the fact that he was Frankensteining guitars together, right, from like Pawns to Shop pieces, and learning how to swap out pickups and doing his own wiring and things like that. So
it's a brilliant guy.
Right. There's a lot of skill actually involved in that. It's just he doesn't have the luxury of going to pick through the Gibson catalog and get all the parts to build it. Right. He's, he wants some humbucker pickups. Well, there's a busted guitar at the pawn shop that has humbuckers, but the rest of the guitar is shot. But he's got like the body of a, right, because he played Jazz Masters, Fender Jazz Masters, one of his signature guitars, and that was a defunct guitar that Fender, like, they built it for jazz musicians, and jazz musicians didn't use it. The only people who used it were surf guitarists, because it created weird sounds that didn't work for jazz musicians.
That's cool.
And so by the time surf music like went away, you could pick them up for like a dime a dozen at pawn shops and secondhand stores and stuff. And so that's the reason why Kurt Cobain had that iconic guitar style is because he could get them on the cheap and rebuild them on the cheap to do the sounds that he wanted. And so, and then it creates its own thing. And so I think that's the difference, right? The difference between like a Miami Connection and a Sharknado is Kurt Cobain Frankensteining a guitar together based off of what his limited resources can accomplish, versus going out and buying the Fender Kurt Cobain edition Jazzmaster, which has like fake dents and scratches in it.
Yeah.
Or being like, you're upper middle class rich kid and you go out and you buy a brand new guitar and then you take a sander to it to make it look bad because that's what the look is.
Yeah. Yeah. Or, you end up making something like that ends up on Adult Swim.
Right.
They seem to have gotten it down, if you ask me.
What, Adult Swim?
Yeah. Like, I think that's what people who make movies like Velocipaster are trying to do.
Right, but for whatever reason, they can't.
They don't have the skill first.
Yeah,
Is the
because I
thing.
think
Tim and
I think
Eric aren't just like Tim and Eric aren't bad comedians.
no.
They're very funny, but they just pretend to be bad.
Well, and I think part of it, I will say, for almost everything that I've ever watched in Adult Swim, I get the sense that these were people like you and me that when we were kids watched a lot of Cartoon Network and whatever garbage they had on Cartoon Network when it first started.
Yeah.
You know, because you can't look at some of this stuff and not think like, oh, this is somebody who watched a fair amount of Johnny Quest on Sunday nights.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I mean,
Or
Space
just
Ghost Coast to Coast
infomercials
is
all night
perfect.
long.
Right. I mean, that's the thing, right? Tim and Eric is clearly like infomercials and random VHS tapes they've picked up at thrift stores.
Yeah, or like public broadcasting and stuff.
Yeah, like these are kids. Yeah, these like so. Right. So I don't know much about Tim and Eric, but it's quite possible, right? That they could have been people who their parents couldn't afford cable, and so they had to entertain themselves any way they could, and so they watched, you know.
Well, and also, you know, you and I, we come from evangelical backgrounds, so like we grew up watching like, you know, really bizarre stuff anyway, right? Like,
Yes.
so we kind of have it. We have that sort of eye and ear for that kind of scrappiness that we could probably synthesize into something purposefully funny.
Well, and that's one of the things, like that's, you know, like that's one of the reasons why I like on this show us talking about what I call Christian curiosities, because there is this weirdness, right? And I feel like I'm sorry, you know, I hate to throw a little shade at them, I guess, but like good Christian fun seems to not get, because
Well,
I get the sense
they have their goals, you know. They're not trying to be like scrappy. They're trying to be like, you know.
right, but they didn't like, I don't know, they didn't like, I don't get the sense that they grew up with this stuff.
You don't think so? I don't know. I think Kevin did. I think Kevin
Maybe
did.
Kevin did. Maybe Kevin did. But there's
His knowledge is too extensive. Like,
that's true. But Kevin also seems to have he's got a bit more of an axe to grind, I think. Because I think like you and me, we like, there's a lot of stuff that we really dislike from our evangelical upbringing, but there's also some stuff that we realize like we had to carve out some affection for it.
yeah,
Right?
I think that's kind of like MST3K, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like you'll these interviews with like, you know, Joel Hodgson and Mike Nelson and Bill Corbett and Kevin Murphy and all these people. They don't like hate these. I mean, they hate sitting through them because they're so bad. But at the same time, it's like you have to kind of love them too.
Right. Just like I will make fun of so much Christian rock, but I will also like I'll make fun of Newsboys all day long.
Yeah.
But you put
on Entertaining Angels, man. You know,
that's a beautiful song just in general. But like you give me Shine, you give me Breakfast, Take Me to Your Leader, like I'm going to love it.
You're gonna start singing it. Like you just can't help yourself.
Right. I mean, aside from the fact that Newsboys has like they used to have one of the most like famously celebrated live shows of any touring rock band.
No, I see it. Yeah, when they like the whole drumming thing where they like
Oh my gosh.
rotate in the air and stuff. That's pretty cool.
But yeah, because oh dude, there's so many weird movies, right? I mean,
The Buttercream Gang. I can't get over that.
the
like-
Buttercream. Is that okay? I have to ask you a question.
Also,
all right?
I watched an episode of McGee Me the other day, Chuck,
Oh, McGee Me.
and I was like, wow,
That
this is
Or no, sorry, whatever that one is. The Night of the Twisters, that Devon Sawa movie that like all my seventh grade girls were super into.
It was one that I owned. I mean, I owned the Twister one, and I did watch that actually before we did our Good Christian Fun episode because I wanted to bring it up, but never did. It was the episode I watched recently was one that I owned that really stuck with me as a kid. It's the one where Nick and his lying piece of crap friend they plan to go see a scary movie, and he sneaks out of the house using a Ferris Bueller sort of device. So when people
right, there's a lot of like Rube Goldberg machinery going on in the McGee and Me series.
Yeah, because Nick is he's like a genius, like he's an inventor. That's why he sees. Right. That's why he sees the
animator.
He has the delusion of McGee,
right,
haunting him. It's his id, right there. Anyway,
the beautiful mind.
It represents his id and his super ego. So he escapes with his friend. I forgot his friend's name, but his thing in the show is that he lies like all the time, and he's just like he's a bad person. He's a bad person, Chuck. But they love him anyway because we're good Christians. So they go see this scary movie, and it's like awful, and it's definitely like stock sound effects. You know how like TV shows used to do back in the 90s where it's like, oh, I'm watching Home Alone, and you hear just like boing or something like this weird sound effects.
Like in that episode of Seinfeld where he's watching Home Alone. And
yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
I knew you were.
Nice. This is great. No, they're just watching this like obviously fake horror movie, and he's just like retching in his seat, like it's like hurting him, you know. I can't believe I'm watching this. And he takes like the long walk home, and they're playing some contemporary song, and he's got his head down, and he's walking home, and his parents are like, "Oh, we found out that you snuck out and you saw the movie, didn't you?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, what'd you think?" He's like, "It was terrible. Nobody should have to watch anything like that." Oh, Chuck, it's just such good propaganda. Like,
well, every McGee and Me video was a very special episode.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Every single one of them. Which, by the way, my wife had no idea what I meant when I talked about very special episodes.
Oh, really? That's funny.
Because I was like, you don't know what we're like, like episode of Family Matters is going to deal with some kind of like topical thing, and the commercial beforehand would be like on a very special episode of Family Matters.
Yeah.
Like Urkel unleashes a bioweapon or whatever.
The time is now, you fools.
The Urkel bot becomes self-aware. Did I do that? Wipe out humanity. Anybody want some cheese? It's like a neurotoxin.
I am. He just starts sparks flying.
This is what happens when we don't have a topic and we just it's a rabbit trail of our brains.
And Matt's not here to be like, what are you talking about? What's going on?
He'll do that while driving, later listening. But oh no, okay. So you mentioned the buttercream game, gang. I have to ask. Okay, so all right. Most of these Christian movies that you talk about, I only ever saw when I had a substitute teacher. You know what I mean? They wheeled the video cart in, and you're like, "Yay, movie time!" And then it was like McGee and Me, like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
But I remember we watched some weird stuff. We watched one about like some teenagers getting in a car accident and going to hell that like scared the crap out of me when I was a kid. But I don't remember much about it except the elevator to hell was just like an industrial elevator lit red.
Awesome. That's so metal.
But I there's this movie that features a group of kids, and one of them is like a genius, and he's developed this like they're like kids at a camp, and like they're gonna have this big like boat race at the end of the episode. And he's basically developed like a NOS system for the boat. Mm-hmm. But anyway, at some point, I don't remember much about this, but here's the one thing I remember about it and why I bring it up, because it's bugging me because I need to find this clip. I need to find where this comes from because it became a meme for a group of my friends and I when I was like from like 5th grade to 7th grade, which is there's a group of bullies and then there's this group of kids that like, I mean, they're obviously both kids. Bullies are kids. But, like, our protagonist group, and then there's, like, the bullies.
Yeah.
The bullies are picking on the kids, and the genius has, like, a gerbil or a rat or something that he, because he's the nerd, sciencey kid, so he has his rat. And at some point, the kid, like, picks up this, rodent and is, like, going to hurt it or whatever, and it bites him on the finger. And the line read has never left my brain. Because clearly they want to show this is a bad kid. Mm-hmm. They want to show that he's the type of kid who would say profanity. But it's a Christian movie, so you can't have profanity.
Yeah.
And so he goes, "Stupid thing bit me. Stupid thing."
An aneurysm starts forming whenever you recite that line. because
Have I told you this on the podcast before?
no, you had. I don't think you've done it on the podcast, but we've talked about this a lot, and I
Right.
swear I've seen it because I
Yes.
know that line. I
Cannot,
know it.
because
I don't
it's-
know. I can't recollect it at all.
I have Googled Buttercream Gang, and the plot points do not match up to the thing that's in my head. And so now, like, is this like a Mandela effect? Like, is this like some remnant?
I don't know.
From
I've
another
I've
universe?
heard this line. I've heard this line. I've said this line. I've laughed at this line. I have no idea where it's from.
Yes.
I don't know. It's great.
So I've been reading Alex Garland's The Beach again,
Okay.
and the conversations that Richard has with all of the people on the beach are like these kinds of conversations. I love that Alex Garland captures that sort of like, you know, millennial, late Gen Z, for him it's late Gen X, but like late Gen X, early millennial, you know, mind that is just a bunch of just like pop culture fragments
Yeah.
that just sort of get assembled into things.
It's mostly a very poisoned mind when you think about it.
Yeah.
A mind that's been Swiss cheesed by television and radio.
Or could it be that it has been colonized?
Probably.
Because I mean that's sort of the beach's whole thing, right? It's
No, that's
European
true.
goes to Thailand, and you know they keep trying to go to new places because they're pissed off at the colonization that they've left in their wake of everywhere they go, but it's fulfilling their mind. It's colonized by pop culture.
Yeah, Joss Whedon made a career out of it, you know?
He did. Talk about somebody who's fallen out of good graces, by the way.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, yeah. Joss Whedon, I mean, he's coming under a lot of fire. He's done some bad things, some crappy things. A lot of things come to light, and a lot of things like it's actually kind of sad because one thing that came to light. I know this we're all of a sudden turning to Hollywood gossip, but I don't know.
We went from evangelical Christian videos.
I now have some Buffy goss. You want to hear some Buffy goss?
Buffy gossip. All right, sure.
So like years ago, Buffy was kind of famous for its really fantastic fight choreography, especially in the earlier seasons, like the first 3 seasons, and that's owed in part because there is this really great stunt coordinator duo, wife and husband duo. I don't know if they were wife and husband at the time. They are now, but they got their start in Power Rangers. They were Tommy and Kimberly stand-ins.
Oh, nice.
And so they could rock a fight scene. They were good. They choreographed them all on their own on the set of Buffy. So Buffy's stunt double, I forgot her name, Sophie, I think, Sophia or Sophie, legendary in television stunts. She only stayed on for 3 seasons and ended up leaving after season 3. Or was it season 4? I think it was season 3. And there was like a huge thing about it. Like people were really upset because like the fight scenes were kind of like were sort of making Buffy on top of like the good writing. And also there was some hubbub about it that it was like, oh, she left because she didn't like Sarah Michelle Gellar. Because there were all these like kind of rumors spreading that Sarah Michelle Gellar had become like a huge diva because of how well Simply Irresistible did in theaters. I don't know if you remember the movie Simply Irresistible, Chuck.
I don't. It turned out it was very resistible.
I just think it's funny that they chose that because Cruel Intentions did come out after that, and that was actually a bigger success than Simply Irresistible. Simply Irresistible, about a girl who has witch powers and uses them to open a restaurant or something. I don't know.
Is that Kiki's Delivery Service?
Something like that. I don't know. But she comes back after that on the set of Buffy, and like the rumors was like, oh, she's a diva now. She was in a movie, and like apparently Sophie like was saying like was like kind of was talking some. She was spilling tea, as they say today, Chuck.
Yeah.
She was saying things like, you know, I would have to run in her place. Like she wouldn't even run. She became such a diva. But now she's come forward and be like, Joss Whedon like harassed me. That's why I left. And so for years, Buffy fans were thinking like, oh, Sophie and SMG, they hate each other because SMG was like a diva, and that probably wasn't the case.
Wow.
So, you know, Joss.
Hollywood.
I know. Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. Toxic industry, really. And yet I miss it.
Well, I mean, it's like evangelicalism, right? Toxic, but we still have love for it.
Yeah. Still, I can't get rid of the good memories. You know, they're there. It's like a photo album with ugly photos, but it's like you can't get rid of them.
Right.
You can't get rid of your memories. It's your life.
Well, both are in fact good examples of what happens when white supremacy sort of reinforces itself.
Yeah.
Male white supremacy reinforces itself because it just perpetuates this cycle of lack of accountability and lack of context.
Mm-hmm. And it's always just kind of disheartening because Joss was seen as like a hero to people, especially back then, because he wrote about, Willow being a lesbian was like a huge thing for the LGBTQ community, one of the first, right, on television, and they're very, very feminist show. He was kind of being hailed as a feminist icon, which in itself is kind of, looking back on that, like, ew, maybe we shouldn't do that to dudes. I don't know. And what's funny though is like, have you ever seen like an old photo of Joss Whedon, like a really old one from like the first? No. Oh my god, dude! You look at it now, like, yeah, I could see him doing some messed up stuff. Yeah, he's that creepy guy. Yeah, he has like long, like shoulder length hair. Like he just looks. He looks like he reminds me of that guy from Roseanne, Darlene's boyfriend.
David?
Yeah.
The dude from Big Bang Theory?
Yeah. It's just kind of funny. I don't know. Whatever. Has nothing to do with what you were saying on white supremacy. I'm just like, he just looks like a creep. That's my.
Well, yeah. So no leads on Stupid Thing Bit Me, Stupid Thing.
Yeah, listen, if you know, please, I mean, it's killing me because I know I've heard it. Yeah. So, I
think that was the first example of like a bad line reading that I ever experienced in my life.
That is kind of funny. You bring up an instance. Like, what was like when did you start noticing like things could be bad? And for me, I actually know when it was.
Okay.
I was a big Nickelodeon kid.
Well, I mean,
yeah. It wasn't about that Disney Channel. Give me that Nickelodeon.
Mm-hmm. Again, you wanted the scrappy versus the polished.
Exactly. And also, like, their advertisements are so good. Mm-hmm. Viacom did a really good job of that. It was that show, My Brother and Me.
Okay. I think I remember this show.
And those kids were just terrible actors. Just terrible. Like, I remember it being like, people don't talk like that in real life. What's going on? I don't like this show. What is it? Because my favorite shows were like Pete and Pete. Great acting. Right. Wonderful acting.
Again, that's an Adult Swim kind of show.
Yeah. All of that, which was great sketch comedy. They're all great actors too.
You can't do that on television.
Oh, yes, Chuck, yes.
Salute your shorts. Hey, dude.
Salute your shorts. Exactly. These were even though they were from Canada, we won't hold that against them. They were good actors, but this is the first show I was like, wow, this kid is like he's struggling to get lines out of his mouth. And I kept seeing that kid in other shows. One in particular show was Sliders. I'm like, that's that bad actor kid. And he's acting bad on Sliders, too.
My Brother and Me is the name of the show?
Yeah.
I want to find out if I know who this kid is. Because I think I've got an image in my head. And I think let's see. My Brother and Me?
Yeah.
My Brother and Me. Okay.
He was the older brother.
I do not remember this show. Okay, starring... All right. Arthur Reggie the Third is top billing.
That might have been him.
The cast, okay.
I recognize that name. I think that was him.
Arthur Reggie the Third is Alfie Parker, Dee Dee's older brother and younger brother to Melanie, best friends with Goo. He is 11.
Oh, yeah, Goo.
A surprise. So this is him?
Yeah, you could definitely tell with the kid Goo, they were definitely going for like a Little Pete vibe.
Right. Arthur Reggie.
I mean, that name sounds super familiar. That's him.
Let's see.
I'm trying to remember which episode of Sliders it was. I think it was the one where it was still like the 60s. The 60s didn't go away.
Is it this kid?
That's him.
I've seen him around in a few things, yeah. I think when I watched a lot of those evangelical movies, that was the way they were bad, but I think I didn't understand the language to, like, what I meant, that they were bad, right?
Articulate it, yeah.
But I think it was just in general that I knew that almost everything, almost all the Christian movies I watched were, like, sort of lame ripoffs of, like, mainstream things, and that the thing that I never really liked is that they all had to shoehorn some kind of, like, conversion experience into the movie.
Yeah.
But I can distinctly remember the first time that I walked out of a movie and I said, that was a bad movie.
Yeah.
And that was Batman and Robin. I was in the bathroom after seeing that movie and I was like, I just saw a bad movie. Like, it just had that enlightenment popped in my head.
I had one too. It was Double Dragon.
Oh, man.
I was excited for it too. Like, yeah, Double Dragon movie.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Double Dragon. I play Double Dragon 2 with Charlie sometimes. It's fun.
And I was like, they're not even in their outfits. What's going on? And then they finally are in their outfits. They barely even fight. Of course, Robert Patrick is, I mean, makes the movie, really.
Well, I mean, he makes the movie and everything he's in, right?
Yeah.
Great. I think I can remember feeling a sense of disappointment when I saw Masters of the Universe for the first time. Because I'm like, where's Orko? Like, what is this?
Yeah, because that becomes the gauge of like what's bad, right? When they're trying to make like the thing you love into a movie, you're like, where's this character? Like that doesn't they don't do that. This is a bad movie.
I love Masters of the Universe, though.
I loved it when I was a kid. I didn't think it was a bad movie. Like I said, I don't think I really realized what a bad movie was until Double Dragon.
Yeah.
Or I don't know. I did see the Mario Brothers movie in theaters.
Ooh.
That was
based off the previews of that, I knew that I wasn't going to like it because it looks like such a departure.
Yeah. From the
show. But also, I think that movie came out at a time when my mom wasn't letting me see movies that were rated PG-13 because it was a PG-13 movie.
Yeah.
Because I remember that moratorium was lifted when Jurassic Park came out.
Yeah, because they came out the same year, the same summer, I believe.
Yeah, because I remember I wasn't allowed to see. I would see movies and I'd be excited to see a preview on TV and I see the rated PG-13, like, dang it, I can't see it. But then I remember like I got so stoked about Jurassic Park until like, and I just remember standing in line at Target, buying a Muldoon action figure, if I'm not mistaken.
Nice.
And
the tranquilizer bazooka.
And asking my mom if we could go see Jurassic Park even though it's PG-13, and she was like, "Yeah, I think we can do that." Yes.
Sweet. Score.
But yeah, I think Batman and Robin was the first time I realized I saw a bad movie.
I defended Batman and Robin. Like I didn't want to hate it.
That was me with Spider-Man 3.
Hey, I'm still into Spider-Man 3.
I spent my entire trip in Thailand trying to defend that movie with Keelan.
It's so funny. Like I'll never forget watching it because it came out the day we graduated.
Yeah. I think we all went to go see it like right after graduation, didn't we?
Like all of PBA went to go see it because I remember my theater was just like all PBA kids. And it was so bad that like it became like a rowdy screening. Like the part where
I remember. I got mad.
You would,
like,
yeah.
People laughing when Tobey Maguire's crying, and
yeah, there was a part where like he flipped his hair, and everyone just lost it. Just lost it. And I was like, oh, this is terrible. I'm having such a horrible time.
Oh gosh, that's a bad movie, dude. I don't care how much you try to defend it. It's a bad movie.
It's, you know,
It was good ideas, poorly executed.
well, yeah, because so much of it was mandated by the studio. Sam Raimi didn't want to mess with Venom. That was what's his name? Avi Arad. That was his idea. He was like, you gotta do this. I mean, he had like a whole thing planned out. And
I will say though that I was totally on board with the casting for Venom.
Yeah, I was too. I'm not one of those people who's like, Eddie Brock should have been 10 feet tall. Like, no, I don't care. He shouldn't have been a Rob Liefeld character. Like,
right. And I also think that, but what disappointed me is that they didn't allow him to have the same build.
yeah,
They made him bulky in the costume. I feel like it would have been a much more effective thing that he's the opposite of Spider-Man. Like he's,
right.
his inverse. That's sort of what I thought they were going for. The Sandman stuff's great. So that's Raimi, and that's great.
Yeah, totally. And thankfully, Venom was completely redeemed.
I've heard people say that Venom is like legitimately good.
No, they're crazy.
Okay.
Well, it's like I said, it's scrappy. It's a scrappy movie, so it's entertaining, you know. And if that's your bar, you probably enjoy it. If your bar is entertaining, if your bar is like Spider-Man 2, hell no. If your bar is Spider-Man 3, you have a good time. You have a good time. Because Tom Hardy, dude, I don't care what Tom Hardy is doing. That man is always entertaining. He brings his A game to every role, and he rules. That's why he's one of my favorite actors.
See, I want to see a movie where they cast him and Johnny Depp, and they give Johnny Depp like crazy hats, and they give Tom Hardy a crazy accent, and just let him have at it.
Yeah. I recently watched a movie starring Tom Hardy called Capone, where he plays Al Capone. Yeah, he plays Al Capone in like his final days.
Right.
And like a lot of people are gonna watch the movie. Tom Hardy is Al Capone. A lot of people are gonna hear that movie on thinking it's like a gangster film. It's not a gangster film. It's about Al Capone slowly dying.
Right.
And
I haven't seen it, but I've read about it, and it is a psychological character study.
Yeah, the syphilis is slowly killing him. That's what the movie is about. And the voice he uses, I don't know if he should have done it, but I loved it because like he'll just be like, he's like, he sounds like this. He sounds like a Dick Tracy character. There are moments where like he doesn't even speak. He just goes, They'd be like, hey, Al.
You're starting to sound a little like Sling Blade, JP.
That's what it was like. It was like Sling Blade. It's a pretty good movie.
Prohibition and taters.
It's a good movie, though. I liked it. It's my kind of movie. I don't think it's for everybody. Definitely not a gangster film.
Like I said, give me a movie. Let's see. Let's imagine a ridiculous movie. Let's imagine. Okay, Tom Hardy, give him a crazy accent. Johnny Depp, give him a crazy hat.
Just Nicolas Cage.
Nicolas Cage is in it. Just cut him loose.
Just let him
do whatever he wants.
Yeah, explore the space.
And then have like a fourth generic white guy character, and just without any kind of acknowledgement, randomly throughout the movie, between edits, it's either Jai Courtney or Sam Worthington or Garrett Hedlund or Charlie Hunnam. Just like all four of those guys are playing the same character, but never within the same scene.
Yes.
And we just never acknowledge it and see if anybody notices. I don't know, Josh. I'd give it to Josh Trank. It could go one way or the other, right? McGee.
McGee. He's not doing anything. No, that's not true. He's making movies for Netflix now.
Yeah, but isn't he like trying to be like a real serious director now?
No.
I thought he made something recently that was like a serious movie.
I don't know. The last movie he made was a movie called The Babysitter that was like a horror film, that like a really over the top horror film. It's actually pretty good. I liked it. Stars Samara Weaving, who's a great actress. She played her most recent film was Bill and Ted Face the Music.
Oh, she's in that movie?
Yeah, she plays Bill's daughter.
Oh, nice.
Thea.
Samara Weaving is, she's got a rising star. Of course, her dad doesn't hurt, right?
I didn't put that together. Is she Hugo Weaving's daughter? I didn't know that. Duh. She's also in Ready or Not, which is really good. I highly recommend
I
that movie.
really want to see that.
Dude, it's good. You'll like it. And the guys who made that, they're making Scream 5.
Nice.
But Samara Weaving, not going to be in it, apparently. And I was very upset about that. So, but cool actress, Samara Weaving. And you're right, McGee should direct that movie. With full Charlie's Angels style filmmaking.
Yes. Yes. Or maybe get Paul W.S. Anderson.
Yeah, bring him out. He's out of Resident Evil movies, you know, like they're moving on without him.
Because now they're just remaking the games.
Or I mean, yeah, or you could bring in Len Wiseman. They're not making any more Underworld movies, so.
Underworld 2 is another movie that was not good.
They let that guy remake Total Recall.
Oh, he's the one who did that movie?
Yeah.
See, the thing is, the thing about Total Recall is people got all upset about how bad Total Recall was. You know what? I just thought I enjoyed it when I saw it, but then I forgot it almost a week later.
The remake?
Yeah.
Yeah, I never saw it.
I didn't think it was like terrible. People like act like it was some kind of like direct assault on God's integrity.
Well,
but
Total Recall, the original, is a masterpiece of Paul Verhoeven cinema.
Well, it is insane.
It is. It's so good. I watched it recently and I had a blast. I watched it again a second time right after it.
That era of Schwarzenegger movie,
yeah,
is unparalleled. The Running Man.
That's
Total
insane
Recall.
movie. Yeah.
I mean, just like I love The Running Man.
Yeah.
I love that movie.
And you know what's great about those movies, Chuck? What's so great about, especially Total Recall and Paul Verhoeven, he knew this. Squibs and blood bags. Now I know what you're thinking right now, listener. If you're still listening after what I don't know what we've been doing. I know what you're thinking. Oh, there's JP being an edgelord again. No, I have my bloody movies. Now listen to me carefully. Think about every action movie that's come out in the past 10 years that's used CGI blood. And think about all the action movies that came out like in the 80s and most of the 90s that used, the blood bags where you saw blood. Compare your reaction to the violence in the recent action films and the violence of the older action films. How did you react when you saw the blood bags? Was it, ugh? Probably. Because that's how I reacted.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it was fun, there's probably like, ugh. CGI blood, you get nothing from me.
Right.
I don't care. I don't care about the violence going on. It's desensitizing us, Chuck.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting you bring this up because Kana and I are working our way through Star Trek Enterprise for the third time.
Yeah.
She loves that show. And
third time, oh my God.
Oh yeah. And there's an episode where they find a planet where humans had been abducted sometime during the Old West, and they were transplanted to this planet, and for some reason, for over 200 years, they haven't advanced at all in technology. They're just stuck as being a Wild West society for 200 years. Wow. But anyway, I mentioned this because there is a shootout that takes place, and Jonathan Archer, Scott Bakula, he gets shot in the shoulder, and they use a squib. Oh, and wow. It looks like an actual legitimate exit wound because he gets shot through the back of the shoulder and it comes out the front. And I remember I actually kind of recoiled watching it. I was like, oh my gosh, that's a very realistic looking exit wound.
Yeah.
So compare that to Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country when they go onto the Klingon ship and they start shooting all the zero-G Klingons and you get the CGI pink blood.
Yeah.
Right? It just doesn't hit the same.
Yeah. I think that there's something to be said about that. And that's becoming the norm now for action films and for horror films too. Where the blood is all CGI, and it's there's a cost factor to it.
Right.
Back then, if you blew up a blood bag, it got all over everything on the set, and so if you had to do another take, you had to clean up, you had to go back into costume, you get another costume, wipe all the crap off, and restage it all over again. Now, I mean, the guns don't even have to I mean, they can even add like muzzle flashes on guns now, and actors can just like move the gun, make it look like it's shooting, and it's like no problem, whatever. Put a green mask over a guy, and like in post, it will like fall off his body. But like people aren't. It's not impacting you anymore because you know it's CGI. You know it's like not real. And I think I think that the point was the visceral reaction in the action films. Like you weren't supposed to be like, oh, that's so cool, give me more. I mean, most people probably were, but at the same time, you initially you're like, ooh, you know, like he's not coming back from that. These days, it's like, I don't know, did all those guys in John Wick actually die? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it makes me.
Or I guess Deadpool.
Well, there's this podcast that you can see we're ending where we began. Yeah. There was a podcast that Father Fun turned me on to a couple years ago that was about audio and the digitization of audio and how that loses this sort of human organic quality. Because like even now, as we're talking and you're listening, you are hearing a computer's approximation of my voice, not my actual voice.
Right.
And you know, there's this element that like there's like a layer of meaning lost, right, between digitization and an analog situation or in person or whatever. Yeah. And so I think that helps explain a little bit why we resonate so much strongly with practical effects instead of CGI effects. Here's a good one in that is The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
The Mandalorian has as many artificial sets as anything George Lucas did in the prequels.
Right.
But the big difference is that they filmed them all on the volume, which if you haven't seen the Disney Plus making of The Mandalorian, it's awesome. You should check it out. But the volume is this massive 360-degree screen. And they projected all of the background stuff of the sets onto that screen while also building a few practical elements in the foreground.
Yeah.
And so it adds this realism, even though it's completely CGI, the fact that it's happening sort of in camera rather than in post-production adds this element that makes it feel more believable.
Yeah, it's super cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. So yeah, those Schwarzenegger movies were pretty awesome. Bring back squibs.
Squibs, man. The thing is, I think RoboCop used all the squibs that Hollywood had in that one famous scene where the guy gets shot by the ED 209 or whatever.
Oh man, see, you know, that's my favorite use of squibs. That is, they're just lit up, and at the end, someone call a medic. Like,
well, I have to go because I have to go pick up my son from school.
That's fine. You should go. You should do that. I'll hold it down here. I'll keep talking. I'll keep ranting about squibs.
What if we were doing this like on the phone and I just carried it with me, picked him up, and just sat him down and he was part of it. And we asked him, "Hey Ford, what are your thoughts about squibs?"
Hey Ford, watch this scene from Total Recall real quick. You tell me how you feel about it.
Tell me how you feel about watching these eyes bulge out of this guy's head.
I'm thinking like the escalator scene. Do you remember the escalator scene? Where like the random dude just gets shot and used as a body shield for like both sides.
Yeah.
Like...
Yes, I forgot. All right, Ford. So this is called Kuatu.
Quaid. The oxygen.
And then we'd be like, I say, Ford, this lady, she went to the same school that Uncle JP and I went to.
Do you think she kept her sailor hat?
The best thing is, I want to know, like, there's some people listening to this episode right now that have no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah.
There are some people who've seen Total Recall and they're like, are they talking about what we think they're talking about? And there are others who know exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And the thing is yes, the famous actress from Total Recall.
not Sharon Stone.
Right, yeah. In one scene.
Not Rachel Tillerton.
Yeah, she is also an alumna of Palm Beach Atlantic University.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think it was Palm Beach Atlantic College when she went there.
Probably. And on that note,
she was listed like right below Victoria Jackson on the Wikipedia page for PBA one.
That's amazing. That's great. Well, all right. Well, on that note, I think it's time. I think it's time we move on.
It's time. So,
And,
all right. So, what's the next? What's our next topic?
We're gonna ease into it a little bit because it's sort of planned on the fly, sort of like the first time we did Music Mayhem.
Yes. Yes.
So a new series. I don't know if it'll be anyone. We'll have to see how it goes and how many listens it gets. Which I'm assuming it's probably gonna get a lot. We're probably gonna carve out a whole new audience for this podcast.
Yeah, it could get interesting.
Yeah. So tune in next week where we introduce Maraku. Which I don't know. Is that the bad cultural appropriation?
Madaku?
Modaku? I don't know.
Modaku?
Maraku.
It's a portmanteau of Mod, Masters of Divinity, and
Otaku.
Taku. Which means what, JP?
An anime fan, right?
It's nerd or
Okay.
geek in Japanese.
Sure,
But yeah,
yeah.
typically understood to be a manga and anime fan.
We are diving into anime, folks. That's what it's all about. Finally.
Yep.
The one pillar of nerd culture that we have not done like a deep dive in yet.
That's right.
We're finally doing. So, join us again next week. And we hope you liked this episode. I had fun.
I had fun.
It was a good time.
This was a good riff episode where it didn't feel like we were just filling airtime.
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't know.
Uh-huh.
I like this one. I like the energy in this one.
I did too. It was good. I want to thank Father Kunu for making it out here.
Yeah, bro. Yeah, brother.
And thank you, listener and viewer, for listening and viewing. And join us again next week. Have a wonderful week. Good job.
Good journey.